Andrew Denye is a partner and head of retail at the legal firm of Forsters. He's also a member of the NLA expert panel on retail and hospitality. So, Andrew, activity in particular sectors and legal firms is a pretty good bellwether, I would guess, of the way that markets are moving. So are you seeing high streets and malls recovering as we finally and hopefully emerge from COVID?
Well, we're certainly seeing an awful lot more activity. We're seeing an increased number of transactions, and I would say that the variety of transactions is probably the more interesting point. So, the loss of department stores as we knew them, not all of them, but I mean, a good number of department stores have now left the scene for one reason or another, and that's left some big voids, 40,000 square feet plus, 100,000 square feet plus in some cases, and they need to be filled. I mean, they need to be filled, because landlords are sitting there with big spaces and no rent, which is not really part of their business plan. And so I think we are seeing a lot more variety of transaction, a lot more variety of use. I think that the traditional high street would have been, some form of anchor. There would have been some form of retail-based anchor on a high street somewhere, whether that be a department store of sorts, a supermarket of sorts, that type of big name brand. And if they're not there, then that need would need to be filled. And we're seeing it coming from different uses now. So the leisure. There's the phrase competitive socializing, I think, is something that's, I don't think we would have heard that a few years ago. So everything from trampoline parks to go-karting to axe throwing, all these kind of things, which were really very, very new, golfing experiences, that kind of thing. A good example would have been the Wandsworth South Side. I think that was an ex-Debenhams. That's 100,000 square feet. That's now being transformed by an operator, I think, called Gravity. But we're seeing that across London and beyond. So big spaces are now being filled by new players certainly in the UK sector, and they're being well funded as well. They're being well funded from within the UK and from abroad. So I think we are seeing plenty of demand, and we are seeing a good number of transactions, which is positive, because that certainly wasn't the case, I would say, for the period April 2020 for probably a good year and a half after that. It was pretty grim. I think everyone will probably have that view.
Yeah. And are you seeing differences between inner and outer London in terms of the way they're recovering?
I think that inner London has had, an obvious, fallen off a cliff in terms of, everyone working from home, the complete lack of international tourism. Harper Dennis Hobbs released their retail vitality report, and the numbers on there are, astonishing in terms of where certain locations are dropping down the chart, the league table. Admittedly, they're showing recovery, but everything from Westfield, Chelsea, Kensington High Street, Islington High Street. These took a huge hit a couple of years ago, and are just starting to bounce back. But in fact, the flip side of that is that commuter, what would have been a traditional commuter, outer London town. I'm in Teddington, which I would consider to be outer London. There are plenty of, you could go all the way around the ring and find plenty of it. These places have had, a huge number of people who are now, they've got their pounds to spend locally, rather than spending it in, a chain for their breakfast, lunch, and afternoon snack or afternoon coffee in town. So I think that I don't think there is a one size fits all to it. I think that there have been clear challenges in central London, but I think that the benefit of inner London is that there will be less fractional ownership of retail space, so therefore it is possibly easier for it to be managed, and you can come up with a plan and you can create a tenant mix. Well, I think that's a challenge for more out of town high streets, because a fractional ownership is a major challenge, I think. Requiring getting people together, getting landlords together to work as a team for the wider benefits of the high street, I think is an opportunity that I think really needs to be grasped. In partnership with be it local authorities, be it bid groups or just community groups. But yeah, I think there has been a clear difference between inner and outer, but I think also the those outer high streets which are in areas where there is perhaps a higher household income, they've probably benefited or benefited. I think they've probably held their end up better than others. I mean, I think it is difficult to say that anyone has won out of the past year or so, but I think it's about about staying in the game. Really, if you can see your way through it, then I think that simply being in the game at this point is should be seen as a big win.
And are you seeing any impact of the changes in use class orders and the government's ideas around flexible use of the high street?
Well, I think that I'm a big supporter of reducing process and reducing red tape. So I think that the proposals, I think they're extremely positive. I've already touched on earlier the point about the increase in leisure uses, replacing traditional department store spaces. I think that there's still a long way to go. I think that there's a lot of work to do to bring, you can bring people into a high street by creating a destination or a product that will draw them in, or you can physically bring people in by creating more homes in and around high streets. And I think there's a lot of work to be done on that front. But that will depend upon land prices, land values. It will depend upon how many people are going to move out of London completely. If people's expectations of the new normal is working in a central London office for 3 days or less, 2 days a week, where are they going to live? But I think it's a very positive thing. I also think that one area which I thought would have taken off a little bit more is just the idea of community hubs. So creating a space where startups can start and just creating more of a sort of a community vibe, in the same way that I remember talking to my gran about high streets. It was a place where you would go and meet people and engage with people, and I think that we should be looking forward with the use of technology, but I think we could do worse than also just look back and see what was a high street back in the day and why did people go to it. And those uses and the demands will have changed, but there still needs to be a reason for people to go to a high street or to go anywhere, whether that's in London or out of London. So I think that the proposals are positive. We're starting to see shifts and changes. I think there will hopefully, I would think that there should be much more to come on that front. I think that the real estate industry isn't necessarily the quickest to adapt and to change. There's normally a fair amount of money locked up and requiring to be shifted. So, but I think that it will change, and I would see that as a positive.
What do you see the key opportunities and problems of the sector over the next year or so?
I think that people will be far more focused on sustainability and the use of energy. I mean, clearly there is going to be an impact upon household incomes, across the board. There will be challenges because of household income and the pressures on household income. But I think that the long-term opportunities are still very solid. They really are very solid, and I think that creating that hub and creating new spaces for people to work, to live. I mean, I suppose you could coin the old Mars bar slogan of work, rest, and play. In the sense that you need to have a space. I mean, working from home, for example. Obviously at the start of the pandemic, a lot of people were just of the view that, oh, well, this is it. Now we'll be working from home 5 days a week. Well, no one really understands the health benefits of work, or the health detriments rather of working from home 5 days a week. So there's this a rebalancing of the whole working environment, which on the one hand, you could say is a problem for central London, which it is, but then that problem, if we see the reintroduction of international tourism, then that may outweigh that. I think that there's going to have to be a real shift in values and valuations, because I think that retailers' budgets from a few years ago were based on 7-day trading. That can't be the case now, which will cause a problem, I think. I hesitate to use the word problem. I almost think that everything is an opportunity, if you're smart enough to realize that it is, rather than be sort of dragged into it being a problem. I think that retail, I think the whole retail sector has been on a bit of a downer. It's been an easy target for a few years, and I think that the opportunities are really very, very strong indeed. I would like to see much more focus on flexible space, much more focus on flexible space, just so that there are no barriers to entry. Tech and innovation, the use of data, the use of Google mobility data to see where people are traveling from. All of this, Amazon have made an introduction to the high street and then appeared to have somewhat retraced. I wouldn't really be too worried by that. I think it's probably fair to say that Amazon know what they're doing. And I think that possibly the more interesting thing for the wider sector is not whether Amazon are physically on the high street or not, but who is using the walk-in, walk-out technology that Amazon are going to be providing for everyone. Whether it's Morrison's or any of these supermarkets. This is the sort of thing where I think people need to embrace it. Now, that might not necessarily be much use now for an independent startup on a high street in an outer London region, but I think it'll be a shift. There will be a slow, gradual shift away from a traditional retail setting with unfortunately we reached a point where almost every high street looked the same. You could be driving across London and frankly across the country, and you would see one high street after the other, which looked the same, regardless of where it was, regardless of whether it was a commuter town or not, largely regardless of socio-economic situation of the town. And think that will change, and I think that should be seen as an opportunity to create, you know, real spaces that people will want to visit.
Andrew, thank you very much for your insights.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.